and this is a space for those of us navigating profound life changes like loss, trauma, caregiving, and transformation. It's about what happens when everything you thought was solid crumbles beneath you and you're forced to rebuild. If you've ever felt like you're standing on the brink, this is the space for you. Welcome. When I bought my first house at 33, my father took a bus from Hartford, Connecticut to Atlanta, Georgia to sit with me as I went through the process. He came money in tow, prepared to help me, but I didn't need it. So he sat there, he witnessed his only daughter buying her first house all by herself. When I lived in a townhouse in Atlanta, Georgia, my father came to visit me. Again, on the bus. He had always been afraid to fly, but he flew because my parents traveled a lot, so he would fly. But as he got older, he just was more comfortable taking the bus. So I'm at my house and I get a call from the bar down the street. My dad was buying drinks for everybody in this bar in Marietta, Georgia. And he was ready to come home. So I went and picked him up. When I moved to Georgia, my mother and I flew down. My father packed up all my stuff and drove it to my new apartment. When I was a teenager, my mother, my father, my grandparents all piled in our car and we drove to New York City so I could audition for the School of Performing Arts, the FAME school. The Police were my favorite group. They were my favorite rock band as a teenager. And when they came to the Hartford Civic Center, I wanted tickets. And my father drove me to the Civic Center. And we drove around for hours trying to get tickets. We didn't get them. I was devastated. But those were the things that my father did. My father took care of me. My father provided financially. My father also had demons, sadness, depression, anger issues. Most of them turned inward, sometimes outward, lashing out, fighting with my mom. But he was a deeply sensitive person, if I think about it now. An immigrant, the eldest son. I can't imagine what it must have been like coming to America, not knowing how to navigate. But navigate he did. He went into business with his brothers. That didn't turn out great. But it was good enough for him to move his family to the suburbs, to facilitate my mom not having to work a full-time job until I was in the 3rd grade. I mean, a full-time job outside the home, obviously. He was a financial provider, a man of his time. Definitely a boomer. I'm Gen X, so I was raised by boomers. So I love yous weren't common. I love yous were acted out, right? My father showed his love by giving gifts, trips, and I just listed out all the other things he did. So it's complicated, right? Because the relationship was fraught. He was violent. He was unhappy. And he was gregarious and amazing. When he died, the funeral was literally standing room only. And his girlfriend was there, sitting across from us on the other side of the church. And one of his sisters said, well, it is what it is. My parents never divorced. One of his sisters asked my father, why doesn't he just divorce my mother instead of, having this girlfriend that he had for years? And he said, why would I divorce Barbara? She's a nice lady. Oh my God. Yo, that's crazy work. But that was my father. God, I loved him so much. He was so amazing and so hard at the same time. And when I finally confessed that I was in an abusive relationship and that my ex had broken into my home and had threatened to kill me, my father got in a truck with all his cronies and he went to try to find him. Clearly to beat his ass. That's my dad. My grandfather, my mom's father, came to Connecticut from the deep South, America's Georgia. I don't know a lot because he didn't share a lot of his history, but he too was an amazing provider. He grew everything in the backyard. He grew sun-dried, he would grow green tomatoes. He grew tomatoes and my grandmother or him would sit them in the windowsill to let them ripe. But the green ones, they would cut up and make fried green tomatoes. In the summertime, he would go get fresh lobsters. And to the day my mom died, she always talked about her father's lobsters. He made the best lobsters. fake stuffed. He'd made his own stuffing. God, I have such good memories of my family. And such hard ones too. But he taught me to drive. We would drive around listening to talk radio. I just wish I knew more about his early years. And I don't know, maybe I can get some people from my family on the podcast to talk about him so I could know more. My grandmother was an amazing chef, baker, cook. She was a maid, I think, for a number of years. She would go work in white people's homes, like, lots of black women of her time, until it got to the point where she didn't have to work anymore. My grandfather was making money, so she didn't have to work. I never knew my grandmother to work. And I was 14 when my grandmother passed away, I think, or maybe 16. Maybe I was 16. I think I was 16. Because I think she was still alive when I graduated high school. But she never worked, is what I knew, outside the home. My grandparents did have a corner shop that was like famous. People would come literally from miles around. There'd be a line out the door for my grandmother's sweet potato pie, her coconut cakes. My grandfather would grill ribs. They would sell candy in there. And I remember sitting in there as a little kid and like a really little person sitting on a stool and eating candy or going in there to get candy. I remember the big cooker grill in there. My grandfather would, like I said, cook ribs and chicken and all that stuff. So it was very, very profitable. I come from a pretty profitable family on both sides. Again, people who just made their way. They just made their way. They just did the damn thing. They worked. And my grandmother, amazing dresser, oh my God, such style. And I didn't really understand the style, I would say, until I got in my 40s. And I really didn't understand much about my family, really, until I moved in with my mom. And then I learned even more after she died, just going through the pictures and connecting the dots of the amazing life that these two people from the deep South made. My grandmother was from Tifton, Georgia. I don't know how she made her way to Hartford. I don't know how my grandfather made his way to Hartford. I have no idea because nobody talks to me about anything. So I don't know. But since my mom's passing, stories have trickled out that so I knew my family was gamblers. That was the thing. I don't gamble, and I have one other cousin that doesn't gamble, but pretty much everybody else is pretty into the gambling. And so the story was that my father and my grandfather were gambling and that he lost the bet and my mother was the prize. My father won the consolation prize, but my mother said, I think that they were gambling, and I think she came to pick my grandfather up or bring him the car or something, and then my father saw her, and that was kind of it. They started dating. A couple of months after dating, he bought her a Cadillac. What? What are you talking about? So, yeah, I don't know. I can't relate. I can't relate to that at all. yeah, I don't know. That's on a whole other level of what I understand. But that's them. That's them. My father's mother, amazing. I spent so much time with her. I spent almost every summer with her. I loved her so, so much. She was so amazing. We would, well, first of all, both my grandmothers, we would watch The Price is Right. That was just the thing you did, right? My grandmother, my father's mother, being Jamaican, we would drink tea with carnation evaporated milk and eat Royal Lunch biscuits, I think they were called. And that's what we would do. And we would just talk, and we would go to G Fox and, have lunch like adult ladies. Like as a kid, we would get on the bus and we would go and we would have, lunch and go shopping, or one of the men that was at the house would drive us there, whatever. Now my southern grandmother, we would drink coffee and biscuits, because my grandmother would make homemade biscuits, and we would sit and we would watch The Price is Right and eat biscuits. So I just had, even with all of the craziness, there were these amazing moments of joy and love and care and nurturing. And I think that's what makes it so challenging, or what made it so challenging, because then there was this undercurrent of colorism and favoritism and, just complicated family dynamics. Families are complex. That's why I share this. Families are so complex. But in so many ways, my childhood was amazing. My grandmother's house was amazing, and I was molested in that house, right? Families are mad complex. And so and oh my God, my aunts and my uncles, oh my God, when I was just a young person, my father's siblings, beautiful. Oh my God. My cousins, gorgeous. You're so gorgeous. Oh my God. Tall, attractive. My aunts, my father's sisters, educated. Everybody was smart. Everybody was gregarious. The house, my grandmother's house, my father's mother's house was always busy. I have so many cousins. Oh my God, on both sides. It's crazy that I don't hardly see them. Because as children, we were so close. And we had so much fun. It was great. So, yeah, everybody's just mad smart. Everybody loved to debate. They love to argue. That's probably where I get it from. And also, on my mother's side, they were in the Masonic order. So on that side, again, lots of parties, lots of card parties, lots of activity. And if I think about my mom and I think about my upbringing, hers couldn't have been much different. My grandmother was running illegal card games, come to find out, for the ladies in the neighborhood. Yeah, had to be, I guess, in the 50s and the 60s. Found that out. She was taking all the ladies' money. So it had to be really hard for my mom to be uprooted from that life and moved to the bucolic suburbs that my father moved us to in Connecticut in 1974. Only black family on the street. Only black child from the first grade to the third. It was isolating. And people didn't want to leave the city to come visit us. They did when we had big parties, but when I really think about it, like, my mom was isolated. My father was doing whatever he was doing. You know, I was a very busy, dare I say, popular kid. So I was always at somebody's house sleeping over. My mom worked by then. She went back to work, I think, when I was 3. I mean, in the 3rd grade, I think. Or maybe the 1st grade. Yeah, she went back to work part-time when I was in the 1st grade. And then she went back full-time when I was in the 3rd grade. So, yeah. And she worked in Hartford. And some other places, I think. Because she said she worked somewhere far. But anyway, my father would leave in the morning and he might not come back till 10 o'clock at night. Right? And so, what's a wife to do? Right? Hence the drinking. Hence the depression. So we have 2 very gregarious, outspoken people, opinionated. My mom was an Aries, my father was a Leo. Here I am, the little Libra, trying to be the peacemaker. So the house was volatile. You know, it was super, super volatile. And I have to imagine, like, me now being an adult woman, that my mom had to be just, like, pissed off and lonely. She was always looking for love. My grandparents were super busy also with the Masonic duties. She had 2 brothers, but they were doing their own thing. She's the middle child. Not true. She was the youngest. Yeah, it just had to be really hard for her. So I say all that to say, I just feel like it was important for me to lay this groundwork, because I don't want to come off like I had this horrible childhood and I don't like my family and I'm complaining about them. I'm complaining about having to take care of my mother. I took care of my mother because my family took care of me. Yes, I was hurt there. I was harmed in the family, but I also was taken care of. There was enough love and protection and provision and knowledge and care that was put into my emotional well to make me want to take care of my mom. All I ever wanted to do was take care of my mom. And when she died, I realized that the reason I worked so hard, the reason I pushed so hard, was because I had promised my mom I was going to buy her a house. I had to be like 7 years old. And I just didn't know how to exist without my mom. Yeah. So onward. But I just felt like it was super important for me to just lay out a little bit about my family and my upbringing as we move forward with this podcast. All right. If you want to share your stories with me, send them my way, because as I said, none of us need to be standing on the brink alone. I'm Zoe Flowers, and I'll see you soon.